Hi everybody, it's Jennifer. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make either invitations or cards focused around wine. And we're going to be doing this with 2 die sets and 1 stamp set. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So this first one here is a A2 size die set, and it's called Time for Wine, and it could just do a cut out, and then it also cuts around the die. So I like that one. And then the second one I have here is called Wine Snippets. And I use 3 of them, but there's different sizes, so I like this one. It has a lot of different versatility. There's the 2 at the top, which I actually don't use. They're very small, but I use the 2 in the center and then the 1 at the bottom. So I like that. And then the last is paper smooches, and I use these for the sayings, and it's a wine sampler is what it's called. So let's go ahead and get started on card number 1. I wind up using for the cardstock, I have this gold brush background. What I like about it is I folded it in half, made an A2 card, and it's got white in the center. I'm using that die that's Time for the Wine, the A2 size, and then I'm going to use a sediment from the stamp set, and instead of using just a plain white background for the sediment, I'm going to use this opal polish. If you haven't seen the videos where I've used this, I'll link it below. This opal polish is by Cosmic Shimmer, and it's called Golden Glow. I'll show you here in a second how to apply this, but it's just to create a little bit of something unique in the background versus just the white. And I use the StazOn Jet Black, which stays on very nicely on the opal polish when it dries. And you'll see I'm just applying a very thin coat here. If you haven't used it before, you should try these. If you don't have the opal polish, that's fine. There's a lot of other different polishes out there you can try, and you'll actually see me in another card use just a regular version of it in a different color. So you apply a very thin coat. It dries really quick. You'll see I let it dry for like a minute or 2, and most of it's really dry by the time I'm done here. The one thing I would say is go over this in one direction. As you'll see me go here, I think I try kind of going in a different way, but you want to make sure you can still see a little bit of the brush strokes. So you want to make sure you're going in one direction to keep it kind of smooth and consistent. So I apply this on, and again, it dries pretty quickly. You could go back if you wanted to make it a little bit darker and add a second coat. I really don't find that it's needed. I'm really just trying to give it, you can see that white in the background, it just gives it a little bit of something to add to this. And the colors that I'm staying with, really in all 3 cards, I tend to go with this dark pretty purple, which I think represents wine for me. I add a little bit of kind of a mustard yellow in one card, and then the gold. That's really kind of the theme that I stay with, but choose your colors. Use what you have on hand. If you have a lighter purple or want to go with something non-traditional, do that too. So while that's drying, and for sake of time, I've already cut the die out, and I had this brown kind of bronze paper that I used for the die. It's not exactly traditional gold. It is more of a bronzy color with a bit of brown to it. So you can see it cut out and what was left behind of the stencil. So it's really pretty. It almost has a Moroccan feel to it when you see it paired up with that purple. You'll see what I'm talking about in that background. So I really like that, and then I will attach it to that background. Like I said earlier, what I liked about this is that, and be careful if you use something like this, when I scored it, you want to be careful you don't crack the paper. So you could, even maybe wet that down a little bit on the inside. But what I liked about it is that it had a white center, so you can write something on the inside. I like to use this Gina K glue to attach my projects. The only caution I have here is sometimes I use a little too much, or sometimes when you use the dies and there is not a lot of room for the glue, I don't know what happened there, but it came out a lot. I didn't need to use that much, but it's not that bad because the purple covers it up. But sometimes on that purple, you can see on that one glass part, like there was extra glue, and so I had to rub it off. So just be careful if you're using glue. Sometimes there gets to be a lot on there. So you can see my paper dried here. This is the paper that I used that opal polish on. And so I'm setting up the sediment. I did not want a lot of paper. I wanted it really thin around the sediment. So you can see I'm putting it up towards the top there and lining that up. And I'm going to use that StazOn Jet Black ink. And if you haven't used StazOn, it works pretty good for staying on. And you just want to be careful because on something like this, it takes a little bit to dry. It doesn't dry right away, so you kind of want to blow on it. Or if you have some tool to dry it, I'd recommend doing that or giving it a second. It also will stay on everything, including your stamp. So you want to make sure that you either can live with that and not freak out, or make sure you have the StazOn cleaner, and I'll show you that how to clean that off. And so you can see I was like, oh my gosh, did it dry? But it did. But I was a little panicked for a second, but no big deal. I had plenty of paper. I could have re-stamped it again, but just be careful. And I don't know if you have this guillotine, but it works really well for cutting sediment. So if you don't have one, you might want to pick one up, or if you have a favorite tool, maybe comment below. Let me know what your favorite tool is. If it isn't this, or if you have this, that's cool too. Comment below and let me know what you use to cut sediments. They're not always easy when they're small little pieces to do that with. So I attached the sediment here with a strip of foam just to kind of have it stand out a bit. And then I decide the card really needs a little bit of embellishment. So I add on some pearls. The first one here is by Ranger. And I just put some dots around in the open spaces. And it's a little bit hard to see on camera here, but when I show you the final card, you'll be able to see it. It's a pretty purple with a pearlized look, so I'll include the name of it below, but I think it really adds a little bit to the card. And then the next one that I use is from Nuvo. It's Crystal Drops, and it's called Ivory Seashell. And so this one I get in a little bit more into the card and adding that in across the top and across the bottom as well. And one thing, just a quick tip, if you use these or anything where you're adding on drops to the card, you'll see that scrap piece of paper off to the side. That's because before I go into the card, because even if you tip them upside down and shake them a bit, it's always best to start on a spare card before going directly onto your card. I can't tell you how many times I've gone directly onto the card and it's kind of splurted out everywhere and ruined the card. So just a tip right there for you. And then to finish off the card, you'll see in the final version, I add some crystal glaze to give the glass a nice shiny look. So that finishes off the card. So let's go ahead and get started on card number 2. I'm going to use a purple cardstock as my foundation. I'm going to use some vellum as the background, and I've already cut out the 2 dies that I'm going to use for this card using some gold, shiny gold cardstock. And the 2 medium dies, one's a grape, it's kind of grapes on vine, and then the other one's a corkscrew. And so we're going to use those. For the sake of speeding this up. I've already cut them out. And I'm going to glue them to the vellum using some of the Junique glue. And what the thought is behind this is I need to be able to glue it to vellum to the purple cardstock. You really don't want that to show through in vellum. The great thing about vellum, it has a see-through property. The bad thing about vellum is you can see anything you adhere it to. So my thought is to be able to glue the vellum to the purple cardstock using the space behind that gold, the grape, and the corkscrew dies. So I'm going to put that down first so I can see where I actually can adhere the glue to. So while I'm doing that, I wanted to share with you, I don't know, I always equate some things that I make cards to places sometimes I've visited or things I've seen. And so while I was making these cards, I was kind of reminiscing about a couple of places that I have visited that reminded me of wine tasting or, vineyard. So one of them, my favorite places, is in California, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but almost 3 years ago now, and I'm getting ready to go back to Italy, back to Florence, and it was reminding me of being in Tuscany about 3 years ago. And so I'm going to show a couple of snapshots of a place that we had been in the Chianti region. And it was just so much fun being out there. And then one of my favorite places to go to out in Napa Valley is called Visatui. And if you haven't been out there and you can't get to Italy, and you can get to California, I really recommend going out to there. It's a nice kind of tranquil place to be for me. It's free to go out and sit on their vineyard, and they have a little picnic area. And then they also have what I call the castle, and I'll include a link below if you want to go visit them. And the castle has a view that reminded me a lot of the place that we had visited in Italy. And it makes you feel like you're there in Italy, and I can see why people would have settled there if they had come from that region. But you should go if you enjoy wine. You definitely need to get out there again if you can't get to Italy. And I'd also gone last year to a vineyard outside of Barcelona in Spain, and it was beautiful too. And it's just great to be able to do that at this point in my life. So I just wanted to share those photos with you. So thank you for indulging with me, and we'll get back to the card. So to finish up the card, I add on the final cutout and the sediment and attach those on again, just so I know where to place the glue so I can attach the vellum to the purple card. And one of the things you don't see me do on camera, but I do after the card is complete, because that cardstock of the purple, it's beautiful, but it's very dark and you can't write a sediment. I wind up attaching a smaller cut out of a white cardstock inside so I can write a sediment to it. So that's just a trick. If you have dark cardstock, you could do that. You could also attach another piece of vellum in there too if you wanted to do that. So the last thing I do is to cover up some of those glue dots in the corner. I add on some pearls just to cover those up, and I do that in the Ranger pearls, and this one is ancient gold, and I'll include that below. I add in some of those pearls in that purple. It's majestic purple, sorry, and to make it look like some grapes in there, and that's the final card. So hopefully you've been enjoying this video. If you're not a subscriber already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you get future videos like this. and the alert button just to alert you when other videos come out. If you are a subscriber, thank you for being one. I really appreciate it. If you like the video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, and let's take a look at the final card. So I use on the second die cut at the bottom, there's a larger die cut there, and this one again is the wine snippets. And I like this one because it's a little larger and it allows me to put the sediment at the bottom of the A2 card. I wind up using, remember I talked about the polish, this one is the metallic gilding polish, and it comes in different colors. And this one is called Bright Sunshine. It's by Cosmic Shimmer, so check it out. And I did the same application that I had done before. Remember, kind of just go in one direction. I did just use one coat of it. You could use more, but this is a pretty strong color. And so I added the layers in just like you see. So you see that milky finish? That is actually the crystal glaze, and it just hasn't dried yet. You'll see it in a moment in the final version where it has dried, but you see that milky version is just, I wanted to give the glass a cool look. In this version, because it is that bronzy gold cardstock underneath it, it almost looks like it's a white wine bottle. I added in the sediment directly onto the card. Now that's a risk, right? If you don't get it right, you've kind of messed up the card, but you could do it again. So make sure you do that before you add the sediment, add it on before you add any of the other layers. So thank you so much for joining today. Have an awesome day or evening whenever you're watching this. Take care.